Hey, St. Mark, I'm glad to be with you today. Me and Coleman and Coleman's favorite little toy Rex. We're coming to you today with our daily devotion. Today, it was kind of put on my mind to speak about the parable of the sower. Um, Something kind of shot out to me reading it this morning, and I just wanted to share it with you. The parable of the sower starts in Matthew chapter 13. We're going to actually start in verse about 3.5 when Jesus speaks. It says, "Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds, and as he scattered them across the field, some seeds fell on the footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on the shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plants soon wilted under the hot sun. Since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among the thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much that has been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand." We're going to skip to chapter 13, verse 18, and he says, "Now listen to the explanation of the parable about the farmer planting the seeds. The seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message of the kingdom but don't understand it. Then the evil one comes and snatches away the seed that was planted in their hearts. The seed on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy. But since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing in God's word. The seed that fell among the thorns represents those who hear God's word, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth, so no fruit is produced. The seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60, or even 100 times as much as that had been planted." I found this parable interesting this morning as I read it, because I've always seen myself sort of as the sower here, that I'm trying to put God's word in its little box and hopefully let it land always on fertile soil. But what's interesting here is you see that the sower in the beginning, he didn't cherry pick what soil he put it in. He just spread the seed. He just scattered it across the entire field, not just on a specific soil, not just on a specific individual, and it represents the way in which we reach out and share the gospel. I think far too often we're so afraid to voice what we think God is speaking to us, or share our own testimonies, or speak about what God's doing in our lives, because we're so afraid that it's not going to land on good soil, that it's going to reach deaf ears, that people don't want to hear it, or they're not going to listen. Matter of fact, I spoke to a student earlier this week who felt the need to pray for one of his friends. And he asked me, he wanted to speak to God, about God to this friend. And he said, "I just don't know how. I want to see him believe, and I want to see all these things, but I don't know how to get there." And I mainly told him, I said, "Look, for the most part, you praying for him is a great start. If you start in prayer, it allows God to work. And then if you share your story, you have a personal account of the way in which God has worked in your life. So even if he doesn't believe you, no one can take your story away from you." And I also told him, I said, "Look, to be honest, everything you do is planting a seed, maybe watering it a little bit, but God's the one who causes the growth. God's the one who causes the harvest. God's the one who allows time to affect that moment." So I think for all of us, it's really important for us to hear that, we're called to scatter seed. We're not called to cherry pick the soil. We're not called to determine where anyone's faith walk is that we're trying to live out the gospel to. But instead, we're called to be like this farmer. Scatter the seed on all soils and allow the soils to do the work that they're supposed to do. And hopefully someone moves from the rocky soil to the fertile soil at some point in their life. But it's not our job to choose where they're at. And it's not our job to hold the message back from them because they're not deep in their faith. They still need the seed to be planted. Because the chances that if we stop planting the seed, then it will never become fertile ground. It'll never grow into what we need it. If we stop planting the seed, then we're pretty much giving up on what God can do, because God can change them from the rocky soil or the thorny soil or whatnot to being true fertile ground. So I just challenge you today. I think a lot of us are holding a lot of things back when it comes to speaking out for Christ, because we're so nervous and so afraid and so worried that it's not going to be, we're not going to lead someone to salvation or something, that like we feel like that's a goal for some reason. But to be quite honest, God is not calling you into that. For most of us, God is calling you to plant some seeds and let him do the work. So St. Mark, today I challenge us to plant some seeds. I hope to see you this upcoming Sunday as we will be back in live worship again. And I cannot wait to be together this weekend. I love you all, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.